Are you tired of having a lot of your prospects say, hey, you just don't understand my situation, or you just don't understand my business? Now, there's a reason, actually 3 reasons why that's happening, why you're triggering uncertainty in their mind for them to even say that to you. Today, I'm going to give you the top 3 reasons, really the big 3 reasons why they're doing that, so you can avoid that altogether. These are simple once you actually understand them. If you don't understand them, that's why you're losing a ton of deals to that. All right, number 1, you're asking surface level questions. Now, what I mean by that is your questions, they're too vague. They're too generalized. You ask questions. So when I say vague or generalized questions, they're questions like, John, can you tell me 2 problems that keep you awake at night? First of all, that type of question is a question that almost every single salesperson since I think the days of Adam has been asking. So you sound like everybody else. So a lot of times when you ask surface level questions that all these other salespeople selling what you do and every other product underneath the moon, when you ask the same type of generalized surface level questions, your prospects know what you're doing. So they emotionally shut down and they stay surface level. Plus surface level questions like that, when you ask surface level questions, your prospects are going to give you what type of answers in return? They're going to give you surface level answers. And human beings make buying decisions off logic or emotion. Now you've always heard it's been emotion. It's 100% true. Behavioral science, there's no debate among science on that, okay? So if you're only asking surface level questions, and you don't know how to clarify and probe to get them to open up emotionally, you're going to lose a ton of deals from that. You got to make sure your questions are not vague and they're not generalized. They need to be very specific. That cuts to the heart of the problem, all right? So you don't want to ask questions like this. You don't ask questions like, what are you looking for in a solution? First of all, that's a very vague word. And it's a word that almost every single salesperson selling vacuum cleaners, to life insurance policies, to cars, to cybersecurity, like any product you serve in the world, says that. You don't want to sound like everybody else. So you want to be specific. Like if you're selling, life insurance, for example, you might say, so what are you looking for in like a specific policy to protect your family when something does happen to you? See, that's more specific. That's like very intentional. Solution is not. It's vague, it's generalized, and it confuses your buyers, all right? Now, you don't ask vague questions like this, like, what's your budget for this type of thing? First of all, a lot of salespeople, especially in B2B, sometimes in B2C, will ask us, what's your budget for this? And they'll ask it in the first 5 minutes of a conversation. The problem with asking that question like that, first of all, you want to stay away from the word budget. Budget means cheap. Budget means like limit, okay? Anybody can go out and find the funding. Unless you're selling a $10 million solution to a homeless person, all right, they can pretty much go out and find the funding. In fact, they're already spending that money somewhere else. But right now, where they're currently spending that, in their mind, is a bigger priority than them to take that money and shift it over to your solution. That's your job as a salesperson, to make your solution a much bigger priority, where they want to take the money they're already spending on something else and move that to your priority, all right? So stay away from words like budget. Use words like funds or funding, depending on what you sell. If you're selling B2B, I would use more funding, because they're funding something in their business. If you're selling more B2C, it's probably more funds, okay? Funds. I just wouldn't use the word budget. First of all, let me get back to this. If you ask this question too early in the conversation, okay, it's hard, like your prospect is just going to throw out a number, because how can they know what they should budget or how much money they need to solve problems that they probably don't even know they have yet? I think all of you know this watching here. Most of your prospects, when you first start talking to them, don't even know what their real problems are. Am I right? Or maybe they know what a problem is, but they don't understand how bad it is. They don't understand the depth of that problem. Or maybe they don't understand the consequences of what happens if they don't do anything about solving the problem. So if you ask this too early in a conversation, they're just going to throw out a number, but they don't realize what their real problems are yet. It's up to you and your questioning ability to allow them to see the gap from where they are to where they want to be, and that gap has to be raised. It can only be raised by your questioning and your tone ability that causes them to raise that in their mind, all right? So you never want to ask that too early in a conversation unless they give you red flags like, is this going to cost me money? Or I just lost my house to bankruptcy if you're selling B2C. Or if you're selling B2B and they're like, yeah, our company's filing bankruptcy next week. Now those are red flags, obviously, okay, that you don't want to qualify early on. Here's other vague or surface level questions. Who besides you is the decision maker? Or besides you, who's the people who decide on this? Okay, that's a question that every salesperson also asks in a B2B situation, all right? So you might want to change that to this. This is called an NEPQ starter phrase, all right? Sally, can you walk me through your company's decision-making process when it comes to solving XYZ problems like this? And you're going to repeat back the specific problem, whatever that is. Don't just say to solving problems like that, because once again, problems is a vague or generalized word. You want to actually say their specific problem. That hits home with them. That causes the prospect to feel like you understand them more when you talk about their problems. Not saying the word problem, but actually what that problem is, like the name of the problem, okay? Like if they're losing money to overpriced vendors, like you would talk about that. Like, okay, and you're losing how much money to this vendor? See, that's very specific, all right? So can you walk me through, that's a NEPQ starter. Can you walk me through your organization's decision-making process when it comes to solving XYZ issues like this? Well, yeah, first of all, I have to talk with Jim over at, and then they start walking you through. And you can ask clarifying and probing questions to even probe off that, which gives you more of an idea of what's really going on and who's really making the decision in that organization. That's number one. Now we're just heating up. Number two, besides the questions you use that are vague and generalized, most of your words, I already referenced a little bit about this, most of your words are too generalized and too vague. You use words like solution, challenges, problems. You don't, like I said, I already talked a little bit about that in stage one. You want to talk about their unique challenge. Like, don't say, can you tell me more about that challenge? When they bring up a challenge, you say that word, like whatever they said. That helps them psychologically and emotionally attach to their challenges, their issues, and your solution. It's the start of that, all right? So you want to be very specific, not use generalized or vague terms like that. Another big thing, number two, is that a lot of the words you say are salesy, and you might not even believe they are. You might even be calm when you say them. You're not even overly enthusiastic or too assumptive when you say that, or too hardcore or pressuring them, all right? But when you use words that every single salesperson that's ever sold anything that they've ever talked to, like, I'm just following up with you. How many emails do you get in your inbox every day where they say, I'm just following up with you, that you don't even read after that? Do you know why? Because this is a trigger word. Checking in, I'm just checking in. Trigger, it's a trigger word. It's like, I don't want to compare this to like somebody in the military, but I'll do my best, right? I don't want to offend anybody in the military because obviously it's different. But in the same sense, it's like if you're in the military and you've gone through, a major war battle and you're a civilian now and you're walking around the street and you hear, guns go off, you're kind of like, you react differently, okay? It's like the PTSD a little bit. I know it's not the same, but a little bit the same, all right? These type of words are trigger words because they hear them every day from every salesperson. So when you say them, what you're doing is you're triggering sales resistance in that person's mind because they don't want to be sold, all right? Their guard goes up. Anytime they hear words or questions that everybody's asking them, their guard is always going to go up. Plus, it makes you look needy. It lowers your status, which is a big deal. Now, you want to relanguage that to maybe instead of just following up or just checking in, you might say, hey, in an email, I just had time to get back to you. I know we spoke a few months ago about blank. What are your thoughts about where you're at now? Or just anything like that. But I just had time to get back to you. Do you know what that signifies? It signifies to them that you've got tons of clients. And when you have tons of clients, you're busy, you're successful. That means you're an expert, you're an authority. After all, how many authorities continually email you talking about following up and checking in? Not many. Do you know why? Because they don't need to. They have a much higher status. So a way for you to raise what's called situational status in that prospect's mind is by communicating to them that you are very busy, that you have, you just had time to get back to them. Maybe you talked to them 2 months ago and they didn't have time to talk or whatever. Now you're just getting back to them. You just had time. I can assure you, if you think by them thinking you're available 24 hours a day is a good thing, it's not, because it communicates that you are needy, that you're just another salesperson who doesn't have much going on. Because people who are not available all the time, do you know why? Because they're busy. They've got tons of clients because they're very successful with those clients. They're an expert, they're an authority. You want to position yourself in that same beat. That's very important on number 2. And then finally, number 3, the most important one, and I see this all the time with salespeople, is you jump into pitching your solution way too early in the conversation. You'll ask a question, one of your first 2 or 3 questions, you're 5 minutes into the conversation, the prospect tells you a problem, and you say, oh, wow, yeah, let me tell you how we solve that. We can solve that with, and you jump right into your solution, and then you're flabbergasted that after you do, the prospect says, well, how much is that? And you tell them, and they're like, oh, we don't have that much money, and then it's over. Do you know why? Because you have to get them to expand on that pain, okay? Pain is good with every person you talk to, because if you can't help your prospect feel massive pain, there is no change. What is the biggest emotional driver in a human being to want to change? It's pain. So if you can't help the prospect feel any pain, if you can't help them expand on the pain, if you can't help them relive the pain of what the problems have been doing them, they don't feel the need or urgency to change. And when they don't feel the need or urgency to change, you know what they do? They throw out objections. I need to keep looking around. Now's not a good time. I need to talk to my spouse. I need to talk with the board of directors. I need to think it over. I need to do more research, because you couldn't help them relive the pain. So without pain, they don't feel any need to change. And when they don't feel the need to change, you don't make a sale, they don't get their problem solved, and they don't get what they want. And whose responsibility is that? You, the salesperson, all right? You got to be careful when they go into a problem. You want to expand on that. You want to ask clarifying questions. Can you tell me a little bit more about that when that happened? Oh, and how often has that been going on? See, those are just little clarifying questions that just help them relive the pain even more, okay? You can even lean in and say, okay, so how long has that been going on, George, in a concern tone? Oh, it's been happening for 5 years. So that's been going on for 5 years. Has that had an impact on you? Oh, Jeremy, in what way though? Oh my gosh, you have no idea. See, I'm expanding the pain, all right? You want to expand the pain. Now also what you want to do, even if they tell you one problem, do you just want to stop there? No. You want to become a problem finder. That means you want to get much better at problem finding. That means even if they tell you a problem, you expand on that problem and you ask more questions to help them find maybe 2 or 3 or 4 other problems they didn't realize they have. Because here's the deal. If you're able to help them find 2 or 3 or 4 other problems besides just the initial problem they thought they had, and now they realize they have 4 main problems when they only thought they had 1, guess what that makes you look like? An expert, an authority. And now because there's 4 problems, when they only thought there was 1, guess what? It's very hard for them not to buy from you. Do you know why? Because no other salesperson has helped them find those other problems. They didn't. They started into their pitch after they found 1 problem. And now that prospect only sees they have 1 problem, and now they might be like, well, I've got that problem. We might be able to fix that internally. I might be able to do that myself. But if you're able to help them find 3 or 4 or 5 other problems, there's going to be at least 2 or 3 in there that are like, there's no way I can fix it. I've got to hire them, okay? Automatically. That builds a huge gap. Okay, this is called gap building, all right? So don't jump in your pitch too early. There's a time to do that pitch, even in that first conversation, if you sell B2C, 1 call close. Now, there's some B2C industries where it might be a 2 call close, but if you're selling B2B, it's more of a complex selling environment. You're not going to jump into your pitch that early. Even if, let me give you an example. Let's say you work for a really big company and you're the #1 market leader. You work for the biggest company in your industry. Everybody knows your company's successful, and you get on a call and you ask them, what was the main reason that attracted their attention, like some type of connection question, like, well, we really feel like we need an expert in this business. We feel like we need the market leader, the biggest company to help us out. Instead of you being like, oh yeah, let me tell you, we're the biggest one, which any salesperson would say, it doesn't differentiate you, you might pull back You want to pull back so they pull you. So you might say, well, just because we're the biggest company doesn't necessarily mean we might be the best for you. I'd have to find out more details. For example, see, I pull back, which causes them to pull me in. You've been forced to, when they say something like that, you get excited, and you've been taught by sales trainers that you got to start going into your pitch and pushing them. We're going to train you how to get them to, how do you pull back a little bit where they feel the need to pull you in. Because experts and authorities pull back because they don't need them necessarily. They've got a billion clients. Not that you're being mean, but you're pulling back so the prospect wants to pull you in more. Well, just because we're the biggest company doesn't necessarily mean that we're the best for your situation. I'd have to find out a few more details. Maybe we could start here. Can you walk me through? And you're right in your first situation question. Okay, so be careful of those three things. And if you want to learn the right questions to ask in all of those situations, make sure you subscribe right here to our YouTube video, because we do several of these per week, and you can get notified. So make sure you're notified once once my team uploads a new video for you so you can watch it. And then make sure you also join our Facebook group, salesrevolution.pro. There should be a link here. I think we have almost 70,000 salespeople in there, many of them in your industry. And we go live 3 to 4 times a week, different Q&As, different subject matter trainings. And you can even meet with our account managers in there that can go over all the different industry-specific training that we have for your industry. Anyways, hope you enjoyed that today. I'll see you soon.